Society calls them cold, ungrateful, selfish rebels who abandon their own blood. But Carl Jung saw something completely different. He saw people who cut off their families not as broken, but as the only ones awake in a sleeping household. In his clinical work, Jung discovered that walking away from family isn't a sign of weakness. It's often the highest form of sanity. Today I'm going to show you why the black sheep of the family is actually the symptom bearer for entire bloodlines, and why Jung believed that sometimes leaving is the only path to becoming your true self. Jung spent decades studying what he called the family unconscious. He discovered that families don't just share genetics, they share a collective shadow, a dark pool of denied truths that everyone silently agrees to ignore. Abuse gets reframed as discipline. Neglect becomes independence training. Narcissism is excused as strong personality, and anyone who dares to name these patterns out loud becomes the problem. Think of it like an unspoken contract signed before you were born. Every family has rules about what can be acknowledged and what must remain hidden. These rules aren't written down or discussed. They're transmitted through silent disapproval, changed subjects, and that particular kind of tension that fills the room when someone mentions the thing nobody talks about. The family unconscious operates like a shared delusion, and maintaining it requires everyone's participation. This is where the truth teller enters the story. The person who eventually cuts ties is usually the one who noticed everything from the beginning. They saw the alcoholic parents' rage cycles. They felt the emotional manipulation disguised as love. They recognized the golden child and scapegoat dynamics that everyone else pretended were normal. But here's what makes their position so dangerous. They didn't just notice these patterns, they absorbed them, trying desperately to fix what was fundamentally broken. These individuals often have what Jung called differentiated perception. They can read emotional atmospheres. They sense the gap between what people say and what they mean. They feel the weight of unspoken resentments hanging in the air. This isn't a superpower. It's a survival mechanism developed in an environment where reading the room correctly meant emotional or physical safety. Jung called these people the identified patient. The family points at them and says, "You're the one with problems. You're too sensitive. You're causing drama. You need therapy." And the tragic irony is that they're often right about the therapy part, but completely wrong about the diagnosis. The person who leaves isn't sick. They're having a healthy response to a sick environment. They're the fever that signals infection, not the infection itself. But families don't want to hear this truth. Admitting that the person who left was actually responding rationally would mean admitting that something is deeply wrong with the family system, so instead they double down. They tell stories about the ungrateful child who threw away everything. They bond over their shared victim narrative. And the person who escaped watches from a distance, finally able to breathe. Jung understood this dynamic through his concept of individuation. You cannot become your authentic self while playing a role assigned by someone else's unconscious needs. If your family cast you as the scapegoat, you'll spend your life absorbing their blame. If they made you the fixer, you'll exhaust yourself, trying to heal wounds you didn't create. If they needed you to be the golden child, you'll suffocate under the pressure of their projected fantasies. Individuation requires separation. Not necessarily physical distance, but psychological distance. The ability to know where you end and they begin. To recognize which thoughts are yours and which are implanted voices from childhood. To distinguish between guilt that signals genuine wrongdoing and guilt that signals you're breaking free from an old script. The moment you recognize these roles for what they are, something shifts. You start to see that your family doesn't actually know you. They know the character they needed you to play. And once you see this clearly, you face an impossible choice. Do you keep performing in a play you never auditioned for? Or do you walk off stage and discover who you actually are? This brings us to the breaking point. Jung observed that cutting off family is rarely impulsive. It's not one big explosion. It's death by 1,000 cuts, followed by a moment of perfect clarity. Someone asks you for the 100th time to ignore your reality and accept theirs. A parent demands you apologize for boundaries you set. A sibling expects you to pretend abuse never happened. And suddenly, you just know. Nothing will ever change. This clarity feels different from anger or hurt. It's quieter, colder, more certain. You're not making an emotional decision. You're making a survival decision. You're choosing your sanity over their comfort. You're choosing your future over their past. You're choosing yourself when they never chose you. But then comes the guilt. Society has powerful weapons to deploy against people who leave their families. They whisper about honoring your parents. They quote scripture about forgiveness. They remind you that blood is thicker than water, conveniently forgetting that the full phrase is the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Chosen bonds are stronger than biological accidents. The guilt operates on multiple levels. Empaths aren't broken, they're alchemists in progress. The alchemist's path gives you drills, Jung-based boundaries, and 3 exclusive chapter videos to turn overwhelm into clarity. By Surreal Mind, 236-page downloadable ebook in stock. Begin now at thesurrealmind.com. There's the surface guilt of disappointing people. Then there's the deeper guilt of breaking an invisible family rule that says loyalty means suffering in silence. And beneath that, there's the existential guilt of choosing yourself, of claiming that your life and sanity matter as much as their comfort. Jung had a radical response to this guilt. He believed your first duty is to your own soul, not to biological obligation. He watched patients destroy themselves, trying to maintain relationships that were killing them from the inside. He saw brilliant, sensitive people reduce themselves to shells of who they could be, all to avoid disappointing parents who were never truly pleased anyway. Here's what Jung knew that most people don't understand. Staying in a toxic family system doesn't just hurt you, it perpetuates the dysfunction for the next generation. When you accept mistreatment, you teach your own children that love includes abuse. When you ignore your needs, you model self-betrayal. When you keep the family secrets, you become complicit in the cover-up. The theoretical framework Jung built around family dynamics provides the map, but the actual territory of walking away reveals landscapes he could only observe from his clinic.
But from the other side of that decision, from the lived experience of actually walking away, the reality is both harder and more healing than Jung's theory can capture. Because cutting off your family, it sounds extreme, it sounds cold, and to most people watching from the outside, it seems impossible to understand. How could anyone walk away from the people who raised them? But here is something the world does not talk about. For some people, leaving their family is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. We are taught from the time we are children that family comes first. Family is forever. Blood is thicker than water. These messages are everywhere, in movies, in songs, in the advice our teachers give us. Society tells us that no matter what happens, we should stick with our family. We should forgive them. We should love them no matter what they do. But what happens when staying close to your family starts to destroy you from the inside out? What happens when the people who are supposed to protect you become the ones who hurt you the most? This is where the story of family estrangement begins, and it is a story that millions of people live every single day, even though most of them suffer in silence. Family estrangement is not just a big fight that never got resolved. When someone cuts off their family, they are making a choice to end one of the most basic connections a human being can have. They are walking away from holidays, birthdays, weddings, and funerals. They are accepting that they may never see certain family members again. So, why would anyone do this? The answer almost always comes down to one thing: pain. Deep, lasting pain that has built up over years or even decades. Pain that has reached a point where staying connected is no longer possible without losing yourself completely. One of the most common causes is abuse. There is physical abuse, where someone is hit or hurt in ways that leave marks. There is emotional abuse, where someone is constantly criticized, insulted, or made to feel worthless. There is neglect, where a child's basic needs are ignored. And there is psychological abuse, where someone is manipulated, controlled, gaslighted, or made to question their own reality. When a person grows up in a home filled with abuse, they learn to survive in ways most people cannot imagine. They learn to walk on eggshells every single day. They learn to read the mood of the room the moment they walk in. They learn to make themselves small and invisible. And most importantly, they learn a painful truth. The people who should love them unconditionally are actually the people who cause them the most harm. For many survivors, leaving is not something they do lightly. Most people try everything before they finally walk away. They try talking about the problems. They try setting boundaries. They try forgiving over and over again. They keep hoping that this time things will be different, but eventually they realize something painful. Some relationships cannot be fixed no matter how hard you work. Some people will not change, no matter how many chances you give them. Another reason people cut off their families is constant conflict that never seems to end. Some families create an environment where one person is always the problem. Maybe you were the one who asked too many questions. Maybe you were the sensitive one, the different one, the one who refused to pretend everything was fine when it clearly was not. You learn that your true self is not welcome. And after years of trying to be someone else, you finally reach a point where you cannot do it anymore. Then there are families where boundaries simply do not exist. Your parents go through your private things. Your siblings share your secrets. Your relatives feel entitled to judge every choice you make. In these families, privacy is seen as disloyalty. When you grow up without healthy boundaries, you often do not even realize what you are missing until much later in life. But eventually, something shifts. Maybe you move away and experience what it feels like to make your own choices. Maybe you meet someone who shows you what healthy relationships actually look like. Maybe you start therapy and begin to understand that what you experienced was not love. It was control dressed up to look like caring. And once you see it clearly, you cannot unsee it. This decision is never sudden. For most people, it is the result of years of deep thinking and painful accepting. At some point, they reach a moment of clarity. They realize that the cost of staying has become higher than the cost of leaving. They realize that every time they connect with their family, they walk away feeling worse. This moment is often described as a kind of death, the death of a dream, the dream of having the family you always wanted. The days after cutting off your family are filled with mixed emotions. On one hand, there is often relief. The constant stress is gone. The weight pressing down on your chest lifts. You can breathe again. But there is also grief. A deep, strange grief because the people you are mourning are still alive. You grieve the mother you wished you had. You grieve the father who could have been kind. You grieve the family gatherings you will miss. And then there is the loneliness. When you cut off your family, you often lose more than just those immediate relationships. You might lose your aunts and uncles who take sides. You might lose connections to your heritage and traditions. The world suddenly feels bigger and emptier. The outside world does not make this easier. When you tell someone you are not in touch with your family, you see the judgment in their eyes. People who have never experienced a toxic family can't understand. They give advice that feels like salt in a wound. Things like you only get one mother or family is family no matter what. They make you feel like a bad person for doing what you needed to do to survive. The hardest times come around holidays and major milestones. When the rest of the world is gathered with their loved ones, you might be alone. When you get married or have a child or achieve something wonderful, there is a bittersweet feeling knowing that the people who should be celebrating are not there. You carry an empty chair at every table. And yet, here is what many people do not understand. Those who have cut off their families are not looking for pity. They have simply reached a point where they had to choose between their family and themselves. And for once in their lives, after years of putting everyone else first, they chose themselves. This choice takes incredible strength. It goes against every message we receive about what it means to be a good person. It requires you to face the fear of being alone without the safety net that families are supposed to provide. But slowly over time, they begin to rebuild their life. They start to discover who they really are. They learn to trust their own judgment. They find friends who become like family. This is what people call chosen family. It is the beautiful idea that family is not just about blood. It is about the people who show up for you. The people who accept you exactly as you are. The people who celebrate your victories and sit with you in your losses. Chosen family can be friends, partners, mentors, or anyone who proves through their actions that they truly care. Building chosen family feels different from the family you were born into. There's no obligation forcing anyone to stay. Everyone chooses to be there. This means relationships are based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than blood ties. When someone shows up for you, it's because they want to, not because they have to. The beauty of chosen family is that you get to set the standards. You decide what love looks like. You create traditions and boundaries that actually nourish you. This kind of family grows organically from authentic connection. Jung documented this pattern repeatedly in his practice. The black sheep who left the family often became the most psychologically healthy and successful family member, not because they were better than everyone else, but because they broke the cycle. They stopped passing down the family shadow. They chose consciousness over comfort. This doesn't mean they stopped loving their families. That's the part most people misunderstand. Cutting off contact isn't about hate. It's about self-preservation. It's recognizing that you can wish someone well from a safe distance while acknowledging that close contact is poison. Love doesn't require your presence in spaces that destroy you. Think about a gardener pruning a tree. They cut away dead branches not because they hate the tree, but to help it thrive. Sometimes you have to prune the family tree to save your own roots. You remove the connections, draining your life force so new growth can happen. Jung saw this as an act of courage, not cruelty. It takes far more strength to walk away from family than to stay and suffer. Staying is passive. Leaving is active. Staying is expected. Leaving is what your soul demands. The person who cuts off family contact isn't running away from love. They're running toward themselves. The journey from estrangement to healing is not a straight line. There are good days when you feel strong and free. There are bad days when the grief hits you out of nowhere. There are moments of doubt, but there are also moments of peace that make it all worth it. Moments when you realize the constant anxiety is finally gone. Moments when you feel genuinely happy. Some days you wake up and forget for a moment that you made this choice. Then reality returns. Other days you feel lighter than you have in years, almost surprised by your own laughter. The healing happens in unpredictable waves, not in neat stages. You might find yourself triggered by unexpected things. A stranger's voice that sounds like your mother, a holiday commercial, the smell of a specific food from childhood. These moments don't mean you made the wrong choice. They mean you're human, processing profound loss while celebrating profound liberation. And here's the beautiful truth that emerges. When you stop trying to earn love from people who aren't capable of giving it, you become available to receive love from people who are. When you stop explaining yourself to people determined to misunderstand you, you find people who get you without explanation. When you stop shrinking to fit into a family system that was always too small, you discover just how expansive you actually are. The transformation doesn't happen overnight. You'll have moments of doubt. Holidays might feel strange. You might grieve the family you wish you had while accepting the family you actually got. This grief is necessary. You're mourning both the relationship you lost and the relationship you never had. But through this grief, something new emerges, a self that belongs to you, a life that reflects your values, not their expectations, relationships based on authenticity, not obligation. You become living proof that you can survive the thing you once thought would destroy you. The family's rejection or anger or disappointment, it doesn't kill you, it frees you. Jung believed that the person who successfully individuates doesn't just save themselves. They become a beacon for others, trapped in unconscious family systems. Without saying a word, they demonstrate that escape is possible, that you can leave and not just survive, but thrive, that the family curse stops with the person brave enough to break it. People who cut off their families often develop a deep sense of wisdom. They understand pain in a way most people never will. They know what it means to fight for your own well-being. They have learned how to set boundaries and protect their peace. They have discovered that love should never require you to lose yourself. The decision to cut off your family is ultimately an act of self-love and self-respect. It is saying that your mental health matters. It is saying that you deserve relationships that lift you up instead of tearing you down. This does not mean the choice is easy, but it does mean that you have given yourself permission to live fully. To anyone who has made this choice or is thinking about making it, know this: you are not alone. You are not a bad person for needing to protect yourself. You did not fail your family by walking away. In many ways, your family failed you long before you ever left. And the fact that you had the courage to walk away shows just how strong you really are. So if you're the one who walked away, understand this. You're not cold, you're not ungrateful, you're not broken, you're awake. You saw patterns that others denied. You felt pain that others minimized. You chose healing over pretending. You chose yourself when they chose comfort. Sometimes you have to prune the family tree to save the roots. Sometimes love looks like distance. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do for your own soul is to betray the role your family assigned you. Jung understood this, and now you do too. The goal is not to be alone forever. The goal is to be safe in your own life. The goal is to be whole and healthy and free from the pain that was destroying you. And sometimes, the only path to that peace is through the hardest goodbye you will ever say.
Thank you for being here with us today from both Surreal Mind and Inception Mind. If you're someone who broke the cycle, who chose sanity over family approval, who walked away to save yourself, then this collaboration was for you. Subscribe to both channels for more insights into the psychology of becoming your authentic self. And always remember that choosing yourself is never selfish. It is survival. It is true strength. It is the beginning of a new chapter in your story. See you in the next dimension. In The Alchemist's Path, perception training for empaths, you'll turn overwhelm into wisdom with practical drills, Jung-inspired boundaries, and step-by-step perception training. This guide includes 3 exclusive chapter videos to deepen each lesson. Written by Surreal Mind, 236 pages, beautifully designed 8.5 by 11 downloadable ebook, in stock now. Start your training today. Feel deeply while thinking clearly. Get The Alchemist's Path at thesurrealmind.com.